piano space-time. In this video you will find my study discussion about Sergei Rachmaninoff's prelude Opus 32 No. 12 in G sharp minor. So this video might be of your interest if you intend to study this piece at the piano. However, certain considerations and thoughts might be of use for your work when learning pieces with this instrument. This presentation will be arranged in two chapters. In chapter 2, you will find what you usually could find in the other study discussions that you find in my channel. So a sort of practical and technical discussion about how to address certain technical or performing issues that you come across while working on the score. Instead, in chapter 1, I felt this time very appropriate to dedicate some time to present in a fairly detailed manner something that I would refer to as a metaphorical narrative that could in a way represent what this music possibly might express. The reason why I felt kind of appropriate to do this for this piece, I'll elaborate about that in a second when starting what I call chapter 1 of this discussion. If you have a quick look at the group of preludes by Rachmaninoff, either in Opus 32 or in Opus 23, well, you immediately can see that each of them on its own is kind of a particular, peculiar piece, in the sense that character, style of the composition, the technical patterns and musical patterns are very different from one to another. So we have an example of the great fantasy and creativity of this composer. Well, this prelude number 12, Opus 32, is an exception to this. But even more, I believe that in this case, we have a sort of additional layer of peculiarity with respect to the inherent one that is kind of common to all the other preludes. Indeed, if you start looking at the score, you will quickly realize that in particular in the first two pages that are basically 50% of the piece, we have a very unusually high number of, I think the technical term in music is agogic variations. So in simple words, variations of the tempo, of the speed that you are supposed to play. Let's see that in detail. So basically in this picture that you see here posted, you notice these orange brief lines. I simply highlighted all those indications that we find in Rachmaninoff's score that gives instructions about our speed. And taking page 1, if you count the tempo indications, you see that we find 10 of them. Going on with page 2, we find again in a single page 9 tempo indications. If you're curious, just have a quick review of the other preludes and you will realize that this is quite exceptional. Yes, Rachmaninoff is always very accurate in the secondary notes and remarks that he writes in his score beside the musical texture. It's like he wants to convey with a quite detailed manner the entirety of his musical message. And sometimes we find often tempo variation in other preludes, 2, 3, 4, even 5 or 6 times in a page in some cases. But here, definitely, is kind of going beyond any established references that we found so far. And this is not at all, I believe, musically or in character terms, a detail. Instead, it's a very important aspect of the, how to say, very fabric of the musical and expressive material of this piece. Just to find an analogy, you can imagine if you are seeing a person engaged in a certain task, and every few seconds it changes the pace, the speed of his actions, going from quick to very slow to accelerating to slowing down, and keeps doing this continuously. Clearly, sooner or later he would start saying, are you feeling well? Or think about a speech that is performed in this way, with the speaker that starts with a certain pace of the explanation and every few seconds accelerates, decelerates, moves to slower to faster. Well, it's quite a particular thing, and in music it's equally particular, this situation. So I guess that this is the reason why I felt very important during my work of studying this piece to invest some time far away from the piano and kind of meditate about this particularity of this work, because it's very evident the risk of getting lost, of drifting away in this apparent anarchy of tempos, very unsteady and variable situations that to me suggests also some sort of uneasiness underlying. And I believe that this is, in my personal view, quite the point in this work. So, as sometimes it happens for other works, I felt it very important to also search some sort of imaginary narrative that might be possibly contained in the music. Unfortunately, I'm not aware about anything written by Rachmaninoff regarding this piece. In case you came across that, I would be grateful and very interested in reading about that. So I had to make myself content about what my imagination and ideas would suggest. Now let's go into the details about this narrative contained in the music. And as a last remark, I would say, please do not see this as a kind of real-life situation with respect to the music is kind of accompanying it. No, the point is to find some kind of metaphoric narrative that is in a way expressed through the notes. So the narrative is in the music. And again, this rational frame, I think, might be a good tool to kind of take an intimate control and understanding about this continuous speed variation that we should respect, in my view, at least if we want to be faithful to what we found on the paper left by Rachmaninoff. We see that the first tempo indication is allegro. In rough terms it means fast. And in my view, I want to propose that the situation that we'll be narrating does not start when the music starts. The situation is something that started before. The music start, in my opinion, represents a specific moment in which consciousness enters in the picture. Let's be now specific. So it's night and it's raining. There is not a heavy rain, not a particular heavy rain, but this rain is tapping on the roof. And this is going on while our protagonist is sleeping. So there is this rain that is going on. But when the music starts is the moment where, in the middle of the night, our protagonist wakes up. I'm sure that it happened to you, something like this, and particularly perhaps when the rain was pouring outside. So it's dark, he opens his eyes from the sleep, and in a state of semi-consciousness, he realizes that this is raining. He hears rain tapping on the roof. And I feel it's quite matching the situation, the fact that we have this crescendo in bar 1 that is a kind of quick entering into the conscious dimension by the protagonist. So he realizes in a few moments that besides being dark, it is raining. your attention to the fact that, as we said, Rachmaninoff noted down in so many places kind of maniacally indications about the tempo he wants to be performed. Here at the beginning, he just writes allegro. There is nothing said like progressively taking the speed, accelerating, something like that. And for me, it's a bit curious that I've heard a number of performances by great musicians, and I'll tell you that in the large majority, in concerts, but not only in concerts, I'm hearing instead starting playing a little slowly and then pick up the tempo in a few, say, quavers. Well, I didn't find myself much aligned with this vision, and I am a bit proud to say that at a certain point I came across a video that claims to present Sergei Rachmaninoff's own performance of this piece. And it was with a bit of gladness that I heard Rachmaninoff playing right at tempo from the very first note. And this again is pairing well, I feel, with that situation that I decided to describe in my mind about this music. And another very, how to say, reputable example about starting the piece at tempo I found in Vladimir Horowitz when he played this piece in that concert at the Moscow Conservatory in the late years of his life. Again, there is a start at tempo that I feel very much appropriate, and the fact that Rachmaninoff just wrote allegro really suggests me that this is what he wanted to do. So we have this rain, our protagonist wakes up, it's dark, hears the rain, acquires some sort of consciousness from the sleep, and then we have the entry of how to say, notes that are talking about himself in these situations. So these few notes to me are like, where am I in the darkness? And notice Rachmaninoff writes, this is not the energetic accent mark, it's the, in Italian we would say the appoggiato accent, a kind of softer accent. And he writes that accent on the second note. So like to say, don't play this like, but instead. And to me it pairs well this thing like, where am I? I'm not saying, where am I? Where am I? With a certain apprehension, right? Irrational apprehension in the night with this rain. And then the thinking of the protagonist keeps going like, and we read ritardando, diminuendo. So it's like he's saying, oh yes, I was sleeping in this lodge, for instance. And then there is, after 3/4, you see the ritardando becomes a meno mosso, so slower than the original tempo. And again, there are these notes that are on a chord that is not a peaceful chord, right? Again, to me, this is suggesting some sort of anxiety in the night. Perhaps it happens to you, it happens to me at times. The evening before you had 1 or 2 glasses of wine too much, or in the day it happens something quite stressful, annoying, or you are expecting for tomorrow something that in a way doesn't let you feel very comfortable. So there is this state of undefined apprehension at times, waking up in the night with these circumstances. And again, there is this, perhaps he's saying, I must have had a bad dream. and then we have again a diminuendo, and going back to the fast tempo. This is quite interesting for me. And the melody stops here with a sforzato. So it's like diminuendo, the protagonist is trying to calm down, so he's saying, let's sleep, right? But there is this rain. That keeps going, right? And so this is kind of pairing up with his internal uneasiness. There is this kind of mysterious coupling between his internal apprehension and what nature is doing outside the house. And so he even finished to say, let's go to sleep, I am just in the night, that these apprehensions has a kind of kickback. He's saying, he realizes, I cannot, I am sort of agitated. And so he keeps thinking in this moment in this way. So he's kind of acknowledging it's not that easy. Let's breathe and relax. This rain doesn't want to let him fall asleep peaceful and quiet. So again it starts, and now with the forte, notice we are on tempo, the same bar as the first bar of the piece, but we have a forte right away. So again, this apprehension is not going away, on the opposite is staying in the situation. So the protagonist is kind of saying, acknowledging forte this time, I feel so agitated. He's not saying now, let's going back to sleep. He's saying, will I be able to calm down and keep sleeping? And here I feel like, right before this chord, until here, he's at the mercy of his emotions, right? And then with this chord, his rational mind is saying, it's just rain. So it's kind of comforting himself to try to persuade him to not be drifted away in the apprehension. It's just rain. But it's not yet working, you see? So again, he's trying to say, let's try to fall asleep. And it's continuing, but this rain that keeps, tapping, nearly pounding. But this rain is so annoying. And yet it's diminishing. Perhaps is the right time. But he's wrong, right? Because now so the rain was actually diminishing, and perhaps it happened in your life that we hear for some time the rain, it's calming down, but then again suddenly it starts increasing the intensity, and now it develops not only in a bigger shower, but a thunderstorm starts. So you hear that we have a lightning, a thunder, and notice here, very interesting to me, Rachmaninoff writes that energic accent on the second, let's call it quaver. It's the second beat of the quaternary rhythm of the measure, right? We have 4 beats in the measure. On the second beat, it writes the strongest accent of the phrase, and it's peculiar because the second beat is the less important in the rhythmical, development, and he would like here to be so strong. And honestly, I never heard anybody respecting this in a concert, not even Rachmaninoff himself. And even more honestly, even myself, I typically arrive here, I forget about this, and to perform this sort of anti-musical, unnatural accent right there after a chord on the main beat. It's like, once again, lightning, thunder, another lightning, even brighter, right? And the storm keep going. Now the thunderstorm is kind of expressing itself. Another lightning, another thunder, another lightning, and again the same thing. And finally, after at the 4th bar of this episode, there is another thunder, but is kind of muffled, fading away, and even the lightning are not really there at your window, are kind of farther. Okay, so now we have 2 lines that are, I believe, the only segment of the piece that is truly lyrical in classical, or better, romantic, or even better, late romantic terms that we would expect Rachmaninoff to write often, right? So we have this melody. But to me, this is not a serene singing, in particular because we have in the right hand this troubled, agitated accompaniment with a hunting bass. And with the semi-quavers even more agitated. So again, this is a lyrical moment. So what has happened? Now we are going out completely from where our protagonist was until this point, that semi-consciousness sleepiness. It's like the thunders, the lightning has waken up him completely. So now he becomes completely present to the point of singing the melody. Of course, probably not in the night in his room, but his thought, his inner talking becomes truly rational. So now he's consciously acknowledging what's going on. So this melody is for me a conscious lamentation, like he's saying, I feel haunted by an irrational apprehension. So even what I did wrong to deserve this uneasy moment tonight, I need to rest because tomorrow I will have a difficult day, but now we have reached a kind of structural pivotal point, I believe. In fact, have a look at the next page. We have a whole entire page suddenly at tempo. The entire page, right? And I also feel that here our narrative is reaching a sort of fork in the path. So we have now to choose which side to take in the fork. And one possibility is, and this is what I will be doing, to continue with this kind of real life domestic narrative. The other possibility would be instead to cross the threshold between the real life practical world and enters into a fantastic imaginative development of things like in a fantasy story. And I will come back to this just to leave a hint about what could be that next step to develop the narrative into something fantastic. I hope not to forget that. So we are at tempo with this difficult episode now, and it looked like with the thunders and lightning we reached the maximum expression of energy by the natural elements. Instead, now something else happens. A wind starts blowing, progressively, gradually. Here we are at tempo, so the wind is blowing steadily, but we have a crescendo from pianissimo to a very high amount of energy later. And so in tempo we should perform this crescendo over 1, 2, 3, 3 lines of 2 bars each and another bar, so it's 7 bars. It's very difficult, and even technically it's quite challenging, the point, right? So we have the left hand, I think, is the wind. What is it? Now is no longer the rain tapping on the roof, are the leaves, the limbs tapping on the roof, on the windows, if you want, on the shutters, because the wind started blowing, and so the trees are getting animated. Look at here what we have. We have a SFF, sforzatissimo. I propose you to have a quick look across the preludes and to find some other places where Rachmaninoff wrote SFF. There might be a few ones. I wasn't able to find them, although I didn't spend hours in super accurately checking the scores, but certainly is a very rare indication. And to me, it really serves the point of expressing that nature now is kind of blowing up in its energy. This storm is combining all the elements: rain, wind, thundering and lightning, right? So we have the thunder, and in the right hand instead the lightning appears. So I feel tempted not to spare any energy here with this sforzatissimo. And what it follows is a moment of panic. Now the protagonist, that thought to have gone through the worst with that storm in the previous page, now instead is understanding that he's at the mercy of nature. Nature is in control, is dominating the situation. He can only be passive in front of what's going on. Here it sounds to me like nature is affirming herself as the ruler of the moment. our poor protagonist in panic now doesn't find anything better to do than taking the pillow and putting his head under the pillow. So we have the theme with the grave notes, so a sinister moment, but with a piano, so it's kind of muffled, like if the pillow is muffling off the noises, the sounds coming from outside. But with the head under the pillow, our protagonist is now conscious. He's saying, this won't work. Will not be this that will make me falling asleep again. And what is going on here? Listen at the tenor. I feel it's like an intimate struggle between surrendering to passivity and instead taking some sort of resolution to do something active. And with these notes, it's like our protagonist is saying, I have to do something, but he's wondering, what is it that I should do? What would be so extraordinary for me to do in this moment? So it looks like a great endeavor in these moments, doing what? To get off the bed, probably, rather than staying there laying at the mercy of our apprehension of the natural meteorological elements. Get off the bed. That looks for a moment a great endeavor. So look how it is epic here. Getting off the bed to do what? To pour some water in a pot and prepare an infusion. It's still rain, it's just rain. And we have a pianissimo here. I don't know, in my home I have a small pot that is good to boil water for a tea, for an infusion. And you hear that after some time that the fire is on, when the water is approaching the boiling moment, there is a sort of ticking. I guess the small bubbles that starts being generated against the metal of the pot. That to me reminds, it is what these notes taken by the left hand are expressing. And now the water is boiling. The protagonist turned off the fire, so you see that boiling is quickly but progressively vanishing. The infusion bag drops in the cup. Well, I don't know if this was of interest for you. Of course, it's not a lecture, I'm not dictating this narrative, but it's my suggestion to find your own way, if you want to play this piece, to kind of become intimate with this very unusual, peculiar, and I feel also challenging factor of the continuously changing time, something that is not really easy to control, to intonate and to express naturally. So finding a good narrative that fits your own imagination, I feel might be a good idea, even because it carries the practical effect of taking you away from the piano, sitting with the score on a table, perhaps with a cup of coffee, and think about that and looking at the music, at the phrase, meditating on what it might mean, these peculiar things that were asked. to do here. Alright, you remember that I mentioned that at the end of the second page, when it starts this point, that we reached a fork where our narrative might take a different path. So a way of crossing the line of the real life situations, entering into a fantastic narrative. Well, I feel I don't want to elaborate in that because I believe firmly that your imagination would be in charge. So what my fantasy might suggest in the developments of any fantastic narrative for the rest of the pages might not fit your own taste. I will just leave here a suggestion as the first step. So if you remember, at this point I was saying that now, beside rain and lightning and storms, there is another element that enters the picture, that is the wind. So this figure being the leaves and the limbs that are now tapping on the roof, on the windows of the house of the protagonist. If you want to enter into the fantastic narrative idea, this might be, the quick steps of a goblin that somehow managed to enter in the house of our protagonist. And all the rest I leave to your imagination, if you like to then explore this way of expressing the musical material with a narrative. Chapter 1 is finished, so now we'll work a bit on a more practical tutorial, step-by-step tutorial, seeing in each verse what I feel is particularly relevant, and leaving here my own ideas about what I did, what I felt appropriate to do to solve certain technical issues. Bar 1. Well, this figure, is apparently relatively simple. It might be true in a way, but it's also in a way tricky. I find myself that, oh yes, I can play it several times, and then all of a sudden it happens that time that I am kind of not completely relaxed or focused, or perhaps not sufficiently warm, and I screw up the texture. And I also suspect that that choice of gradually taking the speed would be a very respectable solution to avoid these dangers of an unexpected failure of your kinematic controls of what's happening. This being said, what I feel we could do to kind of become familiar and master this figure. Yes, before continuing this, I want to say one thing. I believe this is a very difficult piece, although apparently it has a texture that, on average, is not particularly complex if compared with other Rachmaninoff works. But it's a piece full of slippery steps here and there, and well, page 3 I think is technically very, very challenging. So it's not a tutorial that for everybody will serve the purpose of setting the tools to go through the study of this work. Probably it would require instead a kind of extended work with a teacher if you are not yet in that level of technical skills. And for this purpose, I would just suggest you to consider something that, for me, I found very helpful. Unfortunately, I came across that just very recently, say 2-3 weeks ago. There is something that you find on the internet and in YouTube that is called a Piano Career Academy by Moldavian pianist Ilinca Vartic. I want here to express my deep appreciation about the quality that I found in a few of the videos that Piano Academy makes available. You can then visit their sites, and there is a proposal to join their complete course that I'm sure would be an excellent course by seeing what I found in those samples. So I will not hide that certain things that I will propose are coming actually out from me listening to those very interesting and well done lessons that I feel are really very beneficial, and especially in front of a piece by Rachmaninoff, a Russian composer. I think that's very valuable. But a first thing is, first of all, to kind of build up our, say, area of comfort about these little notes that have to be played with a crescendo also, right? You know, here a large arm movement like rotation or oscillations, I believe is detrimental. But this doesn't mean that the fingers, in my opinion, have to be merely in charge of the situation. Instead, through our study, we have to develop some method to activate some micro cooperation level in terms of rotation and of arm relaxation to what the fingers need to do, working in this case mostly on their own. Once again, assisted by a tiny relaxed set of micro movements, oscillations from the wrist up to the shoulder. There are a few steps. The first is to kind of make solid your control of each note, playing slowly with a staccato that is driven by arm action. So something like, and so this is not hitting the keyboard, but is a kind of gradual attacking, and you can even dwell on each note for a few times to explore your subtle feelings and to see when you find a kind of solid and comfortable action for that notes by the finger in combination with the arm. So this is the first thing. Of course, then practicing even with chords. And then gradually increasing the speed and perhaps initially removing a few notes in this pattern. So you can start like, and then a few times, and then building up everything together. Again, seeing that I feel movements of the arm that are beyond the micrometrical, even less than that, range become detrimental. And the last thing I would say, to express this crescendo, I think it's a good idea to start with the soft pedal, but just for a fraction of a second, right? The first 1, 2, 3 notes, something like that. I'm not even sure. But however, start with the pedal down and quickly releasing it through the crescendo. And here I feel to use again the soft pedal around the A sharp and the G sharp at the end of this brief phrase. And what else to be said here? Well, you notice we start coming across the speed variation, and we have to work quite a bit to internalize that, I feel. Another thing, notice the accent on the what is this, E sharp. So it's not a hitting accent, it's an appoggiato. I feel like Rachmaninoff wants to tell you, don't play the E sharp softer than the E, because often in music it's an expressive, expected thing to do. Instead is the E is the important note. In my narrative you are saying, where am I with apprehension? It's not where am I. And And so also we have to pay attention, because at least I use the 3 on the E sharp. So the 3 is a quite strong finger that is, you know, right on the line of energy from the shoulder. So it's very easy to overplay this E, making it too tough. And so I feel, yes, the arm is now in action, but the finger has the role to kind of filter its energy rather than directly channeling. So it's kind of rising up to the finger, taking part of the energy from the arm, but part of that is not going in the key, it's just going somewhere in your body. It's kind of sensation of soundness, of solidity. You see, I'm not doing it. It's not like this, instead something like that. And then we have a diminuendo. Another important tip that you find very accurately in a very, how to say, clear manner explained in Ilinca Vartic's video. I feel here we have to play this legato not with a simple finger legato, but transferring the weight of our arm from one note to the other. And it requires a bit of work to become proficient in that, but I feel it's really the way here. So when we study slowly, kind of becoming conscious and about the natural movements of our arm parts, the elbow, the forearm, the upper arm, not restraining them, not overdoing that, but using them with freedom, right? And playing slow, we can see this more evidently, and increasing our speed will instead naturally, if we are relaxed, reduce these movements. So. And you know, this looks simple notes, but they are tricky because they carry really the musical meaning here. You play on black key often, and so you want to be in a way well hearable without hitting the keys, but over the rain in the right hand. So also here a few propedeutic preparation steps in playing each note, transferring the weight of the arm on each note as a propedeutic work, and then later switching to a legato and to a weight transfer. So let's see what it means. Initially ignoring the dynamics variation, piano and diminuendo. This will be a next step, right? But first to establish with each key a solid feeling of comfort with it. Here you notice that we are starting coming across steps where the thumb is kind of protagonist, because we have this chord in the bass, these arpeggios that occurs across a developing melody. And so here we have to surrender to the idea of playing with a physical legato, but instead focus on flexibility of sound continuity between one note and the other, when the thumb is jumping from one key to the other. And then of course we have the pedal that will, how to say, integrate everything to create an actual acoustic legato. And I want here to highlight that we have a sforzato right in this bar. I feel like, you know, it might look easy to take the F sharp with a 2 because probably becomes natural on the G sharp before to switch to a thumb to be solid, ready for the next step. Well, I prefer instead to take the F sharp with the thumb to play the E with my first finger, the index finger. Again, for the reason that if I play instead the third finger is channeling easily too much energy from the arm, and this sforzato could become easily too harsh. Instead, the index finger, in the position it is kind of breaking the energy transmission line, and sometimes this is a problem. Here I think is a facilitation, not to overplay this accent that I think is not the case to do. Here, well, one of the challenges is not to lose sound. We have a piano in this bar, but there are many notes here happening in the right hand. You have the pedal for the legato, so it should be, however, a singing piano. And again, practice that in those steps with the arm action. Switching to a more legato performance with weight transfer across the note of the melody. And also one step is to play the right hand in chords that also helps to become intimate with the harmonic frame, and not to overwhelm our mind when we work on the left hand, playing a simpler pattern. We might end with the E sharp, again with the soft pedal if you want to play that really gently, again with the caution of not losing that, right? So especially if we use the soft pedal, however, the grasping should be kind of neat. And here again we have the initial melody, but notice that it's forte, so the same work with the awareness about the different energy level. I realized that I forgot to turn on my upper camera. Apologies. Let's keep going. Now basically the texture keep doing more or less what happened before, with some tricky fingering situations in the left hand, right? I played slowly, but the starting principles I think are the same as presented so far. So here, do not miss those appoggiato accents that Rachmaninoff writes here. Personally, I go to the soft pedal, una corda here. I keep it pressed until the crescendo in the poco ritardando we have at the end of the line. I release it here more or less, and with some caution, considering the accent without too much energy. the D sharp. And I am here with the soft pedal, so it helps to make an effective crescendo here. Of course, here things start becoming complicated. It's one of those tricky, slippery passages I referred to before. So the left end. Well, first I would familiarize with the beautiful harmonic frame of these 4 bars. So few times, because this is important, is the frame of the music. And then we have to work on this thunder in the left end. So I think with our focus to learn that from here, I have to jump on the B here. So staccato propedeutic exercising. Up to here is not that problematic, but then we have to take the D sharp in the bass that is quite far away. So I think we have to spend some time in finding, the proportion of movements and that right range of cooperation between the arm and the fingers that make this possible. The re is in a way important because it's the complete expression of the thunder, and necessarily we have to do a kind of micro dwelling in it to make it sound audible. So practically it's kind of natural that the rhythm is not exactly maintained, so we have to work to find a convincing balance between a necessary micro rallentato to manage the complicated situation on one end, and not to steal notes and be coherent. And if we want to be very faithful to the score, notice that energic accent on the second beat of the bar. So we have an appoggiato accent here, so not too much energy. And this would be the strongest accent, so I feel the last lightening in this moment. What else to say? Yes, practicing separate hands. Of course, realizing the importance of this chromatic progression in the middle of the chord that is very expressive. That is mirrored in the left hand. And even removing notes to kind of get acquainted with the musical frame, the flow frame of the music. At the end we have a real ritardando, right? removing and inserting the elements where I want to shift my focus to become more familiar and solid on them. Now we have the lyric line. So the right hand, you see, notice the details. We have 2 times the medium energy accent on the first note. Yes, now I realize that on the other edition I have a stronger accent instead on the third bar here. I don't know what's really accurate with respect to the original, who knows. And well, this is complicated, I feel, in the left hand especially. I feel that we don't have to be scholastic in holding physically the bass line, because at least for me it makes things truly complicated in the left hand. So I won't stick in the perfect duration of this line, but my ear has to be vigilant, because I want that with the pedal and with the sound intensity I'm creating a very important hunting line that is generating the sense of, how to say, a creeping apprehension. And now to build up things. And working, cutting off very brief bunches. This is, I feel, a rather difficult passage despite what it looks at first sight. So again, let's play it with the staccato arm technique to become solid on the, you know, 3-dimensional situation. And certainly even with separate hands, right? Again, this is propedeutic, so after 2, 3, perhaps 4 times, gradually moving to the more natural musical legato when our physical sensation suggests it's the time. Initially maintaining a deep though gradual attack of the keys. And remember, with working on the weight transferring in the singing line from the arm to the key. Also on these insidious little jumps. You know, for me, here it doesn't sound practically very helpful for me to work too much in chords, because I feel that the left hand patterns that are really tricky for me become slightly easier if there is a real cooperation between the arm dynamic and what the fingers are doing. So if I try to work a bit like, but I think this just maybe 1-2 times, no more, because eventually I feel that if I don't activate some rotation and three-dimensional cooperation by the arm, really things become messy, difficult to control. Instead, the idea is doing something like finding for each finger the position of the arm that is helping the ergonomy and the control. And then, of course, increasing the speed, these movements become more subtle, more micrometrical, but they are there and are very important for me to control the situation. As you're seeing, I'm not holding the finger because I feel things become very difficult to control. At higher speed, of course, I don't mean slowly. Also, the trap is that when you play slow, there are things you can do that becomes instead not helpful when you speed up. So after slow practice, we have to be brave to gradually increase the speed, and if we find something that at full speed is kind of not working, we have to reconsider perhaps our idea. Now here for me becomes very difficult. So the left hand, of course, is leading, so we have to familiarize well with this leading melody. This one. And even the right hand is quite difficult when you are at full speed. So propedeutically, let's start like. Something easily not appropriate, not effective is to start too early, or better, not being sufficiently gradual with the crescendo, because we have really a lot of notes to play along our poco a poco crescendo. So it's like probably the first line is more an illusion of crescendo in our mind, and then very gradually starting a bit in the next line, then releasing the soft pedal, and finally to reach that sforzatissimo with a last, more abrupt crescendo in the last quavers there when it happens. Playing it chords is a propedeutical step, I think, helpful here. this? Because again, I think that the cooperation of the arm is very important here, especially when things become, to say, more tense, and it's difficult to control that. So a tiny rotation, cooperation with the arm oscillations is important, I think. And this comes, of course, becoming aware about what is possible to do for the arm when I play this figure. I feel that the pedal shift in the last bar of this episode from let's say a quarterly change to a B quarter change. Yes, they are not quarters, I hope you understand what I mean. So there are more carrying beats, right? Each beat is 3 quavers or 6 semi-quavers. So I am calling it quarter, is not appropriate, but I hope you got the idea. Here I feel is the case of holding it for 2 of these notes because we want the bass to remain in the background. Even more here. Now there is another thunder coming up according to my narrative expressed in chapter 1. And here practicing quite a bit with the arm, relaxed release of energy to help this chord to be juicy but also very energical. We have a sforzatissimo, a very rare indication by Rachmaninoff, and so I think we don't have to save much here. I suggest to end this after a few E sharp in the next bars, because we have to be, how to say, agile and rhythmically consistent from here. The time is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Even faster, perhaps, if you play it faster, the allegro indication. Yes, even faster. And focus to have this A entering on the beat. So 1, 2, 3. Is now, as you see, shifting with these very energetic accents here. Here is very difficult, so again, establishing a good rhythmical frame. And then practicing this that for me is very intricate and tricky. So I feel this fingering is slightly helping the situation, so the first two group of four semiquavers like this, and then 3, 4. I don't know, for me it helps a bit. Not to be lost in the chaos of the situations here is musical panic, I feel. I had to work, on these couple of bars last, I don't know, 2-3 seconds, not much more. But if I put together my studying sessions, probably I build up about 1 hour of studying slow, with few notes, again with arm exercising, and then filling up gradual increase of speed, and it would require continuous maintaining, I think. So is definitely not appropriate in terms of length, at least for me. I had to cut much shorter chunks of this point and work individually of them, because in each of them there are different micro choreographies to become kind of master of. So rhythm comes back, so the left hand should practice that. So here we were at. Practicing the left hand alone. And this jump here requires a bit of work. I feel that propedeutically we might add one G sharp that helps to have a hand configuration more solid, right? Removing, because it's not written unless you want to keep it for your own decision. Now, again it comes let's call it the theme of the beginning in the left hand, but it's piano, in the grave side of the piano. And so I feel soft pedal is appropriate, maintaining a solid, how to say, action, because we want the strings to vibrate here. Practicing a bit. E sharp, a bit critical, so with patience gradually we have an arpeggio here. Trying to land on the E sharp in the more steady possible way, perhaps with a slightly flat finger to increase the air of contact. if you like, to be more gradual. Maintaining the soft pedal down, we are in piano, but paying attention to make hearable the sinking line here. So starting with soft pedal and releasing that with the crescendo, and again in the very last two notes, the soft pedal to go back to the piano. And also don't forget that we are not in the allegro time here, we are in the meno mosso. This is similar to the end of the second page, so to be studied with some attention. It's a B. This B is very important physically, not to get lost in the instability of the situation where, you know, the right hand has to play this kind of awkward chord, while the left hand is jumping in the very low section of the keyboard. So I feel holding in the ritardando this B physically helps to maintain our compass in the situation. So right hand to be practiced in itself. And the left hand go in the lower section, and I guess the attention should be on the thumb, that is the reference point, right? The pinky is too far away, but considering the span of the octave, the thumb is a good reference, I think. Notice the accent, the melodic important element is this B in the left hand. So semiquavers in the right hand with 6 in the left hand. Is quite complicated. I wouldn't be concerned in finding an exact way of combining them, just practicing the patterns and paying attention to them together, I guess, with these notes here. Clearly the right hand is kind of going a bit faster than the left hand to fit 7 notes, while the left hand is playing just 5 after the chord here. Soft pedal might have come already, I feel, at this chord. Here it's a bit tricky, it requires practicing a bit to jump from here with the left hand to this D sharp with the pinky. So we have to find the proper curvature to be sufficiently accurate, solid in taking it with a moment where we should be in pianissimo, right? Practicing a bit the higher notes. Whatever in the left hand. Thank you for watching this presentation until this point. So I wish you good luck with the work of this beautiful prelude. Well, I hope to see you again in my next video.